Order online at picassospizza.net.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to this Trainwreck Sports Podcast, where we are here to pay the bills. Jake Micah, joined by we're here, Mike Bunt, AJ Zapolsky, Carson Hayek, as we are back for another week of Bills talk here. We had a game a while, it feels like a year ago at this point. The Bills defeated the Dolphins Thursday Night Football. We've got the Saints coming up. And with that time, guys, we had a long weekend, a lot of football watching. It gives fans a lot of times to talk, a lot of times to ruminate on the season, a lot of time to reflect on what's been going on this season. And there's been some chatter among the fan base that we're going to get into tonight. There's been a lot of talk about the offense, despite the statistics on the points per game and everything else about where they're at and what they look like aesthetically, stylistically, philosophically. We're going to talk about the defensive side of the ball. Were there any concerns there? Let's start quick with immediate thoughts. If there's anything that we want to touch on with the Dolphins game to wrap up, I know it's been a couple days, but Bunt, is there any biggest takeaways from that Dolphins game? Was it just, I'm assuming the last Dolphins matchup in Highmark Stadium, unless they make some miraculous run here. What were your takeaways leaving the stadium on Thursday night?
Yeah, it was kind of a boring game overall. You went into it thinking the Bills were going to kind of cruise to victory, and didn't end up being the case. But I never really felt like the Dolphins were in a position where they were going to actually get a victory and upset the Bills. Bills offense had a few quiet moments, but for the most part, they had a lot of long drives. They were getting a decent amount of yardage. The passing game could definitely improve. Running the ball wise, they were kind of dominating first half, kind of tailed off in the second half. Defensively, kind of hot and cold. You look at the numbers at the end of the day; they weren't bad. They were solid overall, but the third down defense was really poor. And they ended up making a play when it mattered the most, but just not a complete game. But a win is a win. You take it any way you can against a divisional opponent, and at the end of the day, you get the win. You move on, and now you got New Orleans, and the Bills are heavy favorites this week.
Yeah, it definitely wasn't the most perfect game I've watched. They definitely struggled a little bit, but I think this Dolphins team, we talked about it a lot on the previous show last week about how the Dolphins are really fighting for their season. 0.9% of teams make the playoffs at 0-3. If they lose to the Bills, on a short week, they're 0-3, and they're looking at a really tough schedule ahead, and the questions about the head coach and Tua. So I thought the Dolphins did show some compete. Some ability that they wanted to be there. They wanted to play. They didn't just walk in there and get destroyed. So I was impressed with the Dolphins and the way they played. In terms of the Bills, I loved what I saw from Dalton Kincaid. They got him involved early. He took a nice tight end screen, almost scored. He obviously had the big reception on the first touchdown of the Bills to make it 7-7. So that was a really nice play from Kincaid there. So I really like that. And then obviously this run game that's first in the NFL right now, averaging 163 yards per game on the ground. It's just mightily impressive what this offensive line's been able to do. And what Joe, I know we're going to get to it, but what Joe Brady's been able to do as, a complementary two-dimensional offensive coordinator for this offense and his ability to get, both involved. But I agree with Mike. I think the passing game, there's still something to be desired, but I liked what I saw from Dalton Kincaid and also Elijah Moore. I think he was or is what they kind of wanted Isaiah McKenzie to be, with a little bit more receiving ability. I think he is a good gadget guy. I think he's taken a couple of end arounds. He's been explosive. You've seen that speed in the open field when he's caught the ball. He had a big catch down the stretch against Miami. So I like what I've seen from Elijah Moore. I don't even know if Curtis Samuel is going to get a look at this point. That the contract, that whole signing just didn't work out, and that's okay. But I'm happy they found Elijah Moore, and I think he is proving to people that he can be that gadget guy, kind of wide receiver 4 type player that can, make some plays when needed. So overall, not the prettiest, but they got the job done 3-0. And like Mike said, on to New Orleans.
You guys touched on it. Not the prettiest of wins at all, but it was nice to see the Bills pull through. It felt like, Bunt, you touched on as well, with the Dolphins never really feeling like they had a significant chance to win. As far as a Bills fan's perspective, I always thought the Bills were going to come out with that game one way or another. Got a little closer than we probably would have liked, but hey, fourth quarter, Deion Walker makes a phenomenal play on a rush. Looked like he tipped the football. Terrell Bernard, nice interception. But from a micro perspective, I thought the tight end room is probably the best it's been in the Josh Allen era. Kincaid's having that breakout year. I wrote an article on it just a few days ago. He's on pace for over 850 yards. He's already matched his TD total from last season. He's second on the team in receiving yards and reception. So it's great to see from that. Jackson Hawes is an absolute weapon in the run game. He's also shown that he has a little bit of athleticism too in the passing game. And then you have Dawson Knox, who's just Mr. Reliable when it comes to, what he's going to get at the end of the year as far as stats, and he can come in and be that extra tight end for you if need be. So overall, though, 3-0, can't really complain on that. Schedule gets a little easier here. We'll touch on it, but 3-0, can't complain. Want to know each week.
Absolutely. To touch on the Kincaid part of it, he's one of the most efficient receivers in the league, according to the passer rater when target and yards per route right now. He's up there with Michael Pittman and Tucker Kraft, the outliers of the Puka Nacua and Jason Smith and Jigma, but Kincaid would have been one of the best in the league so far this year from that regard, and he's looked a lot better. I mean, there's a lot we're going to get into any concerns or any major things from this game. It's a short rest game. It's a team that came in desperate, but honestly, the Bills game, it was them hurting themselves as much as anything else. A missed opportunity to put points on the board, giving the Dolphins some more life there at the end of the first half. I've never seen, they said after the game, they've never seen this offensive game plan from the Dolphins. They flip tendencies on them completely. I've never seen Tua out of the pocket, scrambling and making the plays that he did the other day too. So it was there was just some weird stuff about this game, but it never felt to me, even fourth quarter tie game, I really never felt like it was out of the Bills' control, that they'd just be able to kind of, handle that game and choke it off at the end there. So it worked out. You get a win. You get 2 division wins in 5 days. You got to be happy with that. 3-0, and as we said, heading into New Orleans team that they are heavily favored over. I think it's at, is it still at 16.5? I thought I saw it at 15.5 too. I think it's been bouncing back and forth, but heavily favored going into this week over a team who's coming off a West Coast trip and just got obliterated. So we're not going to get, we don't really have a lot to preview to that game. So that's what I mean. We're going to take a little step back here because there has been a lot of talk, guys, about from the fan base, through the fan base, just about the offense and whether this, but I want you to kind of lay it out here as much as anything else, because is it philosophically, is it the sustainability of what they think this can be? Like, is it just wanting some more flash and substance? Like, I'm not entirely sure what the full complaints are, but there is, and it's been a topic of conversation among other Bills, podcasts and conversations on the radio and everything else about what they're doing stylistically, and is this, something that can be sustained and for a Super Bowl run going forward? Do you have any concerns? What do you think of the concerns? Just what do you think of the offensive production as we've seen to start this year, and coming out of this Miami game specifically?
I think a lot of the concerns are foolish and show a lack of football knowledge from a large portion of our fan base. And I'm not saying that to be mean to anybody, but like, the Bills have been dominant in the regular season since Joe Brady took over, excluding the Patriots finale in which Josh Allen only took 1 snap. The Bills are 22-4 in that stretch, winning over 84% of their games. They have the best record in the NFL during that span of time. They are scoring 30.7 points per game. They're the least sacked team in the NFL. They have the fewest turnovers in the NFL since 2024. They have one of the best running games in the NFL. Their quarterback won an MVP despite not having good receivers to throw the ball to last year. They're doing everything that you are supposed to do on offense to be a winning team. What it comes down to is this. We had a period of time from 2018, I know the Bills weren't lighting teams up back then, but from 2018 to 2022, where we were seeing historic NFL production. Teams were airing the ball out more than ever before. Vertical explosive plays were at an all-time high, and you were seeing quarterbacks throwing 40-plus touchdowns and lighting it up, and we got accustomed to it. We have a freak quarterback. We got used to it, and we just thought that's just the way it's going to be. Well, then, as always happens in the NFL, defenses adjusted. They started going to their too high safety looks, and they started saying, you got to play in front of us. We're not going to let you just get over the top all the time. So what has happened as a result of that? Teams started running the ball more, because the answer to having too high safety looks is, if you can run for 5 yards a carry, you run the ball. Take what they're giving you. So the Bills were a little bit late to making that adjustment. With Ken Dorsey, they're still trying to throw the ball all over teams. They did try shorter passing, but what did you see? The Bills, they struggled sometimes running against light boxes, and they were still trying to throw downfield. And you had Josh Allen with a year where he threw for almost 20 interceptions. They were losing games. They were 5-5 with Ken Dorsey. They honestly should have missed the playoffs that season. But Joe Brady takes over just in time. They finished the year 6-1. And based on going to more of a run-based offense, they started having more success. And people were like, well, is this Joe Brady, or is this just him continuing what the Bills offense was? So going into 2024, the talk on GR and other Bills media was, they're not going to really run the ball that much with Josh Allen being their quarterback. They need to air it out more. Well, then James Cook ends up tying a Bills single-season rushing record. They pound the rock. Now they have a variety of ways to win games. Like, you think against the Bengals in the playoffs when they lost. Why did they lose? It's a weather game, a snow game, and they have no ability to run the ball. They have to force the ball in the air, and the Bengals found a way to shut it down, and they had no other answers. The Bills now, it's not that they can't go deep. It's not that they don't want to explore explosive plays. It's the fact that right now their run game is generating more explosive plays. James Cook is a threat to break it for a touchdown every time he gets the ball. He leads the league in explosive touchdowns in the last year. So James Cook is your explosive threat. And then you look at offensively, Cover One and Sal Capaccio had a great breakdown recently. They still have a lot of route concepts to go deep. But you know what has gotten much better? Josh Allen pre-snap reads. He's reading defenses better. He's going through his progressions. And now, because he has a better feel of what defenses are doing, he's getting the ball out and timing things better. And he's taking what's given to him. The Bills' offense has been nearly unstoppable since, because instead of trying to force things that are low percentage throws at times, Josh is now playing quarterback better than he ever has in his career. And fans are mistaking that for, well, we don't have enough big plays. Well, if a consistent NFL offense isn't based off of just having big plays, normally those are the inconsistent offenses that depend too much on big plays. Consistent offenses take what they're given and they consistently make the right plays. And then they rely on big plays when they have a matchup that warrants it, or they need to get back into a game, AKA what we saw against Baltimore. So I think a lot of this is just, and I don't mean this to be rude on fans or anything like that. It's just a lack of football knowledge. It's a lack of understanding how the game is played. And really, there is very little to be critical of this Bills offense at this point in time. And another fact that needs to be stated, just because the Bills haven't been throwing it downfield doesn't mean that they can't do it when it's warranted. It doesn't mean that there aren't play calls where they are able to take advantage. You just have a smart quarterback playing smart football. And the last point I will say, is it any coincidence that since Josh stopped turning the ball over, the Bills have started winning at a much higher rate? Think about the losses they had in 2023. They had a 3-interception game against the Jets. They had a game where Josh had a turnover against the Broncos on Monday Night Football that they lost. They had a game against the Patriots that they lost on the road where Josh threw an early interception. They're almost saying, we don't think 95% of teams in the NFL can beat us as long as we play a safe, efficient, effective brand of football. And with this Bills defense too, with how mediocre they have been, do you think this is a defense where you want to give the other team good field position throughout the game due to dumb mistakes? Absolutely not. This is as much to protecting their defense as it is also being efficient and effective on offense.
Yeah, and how Mike finished that point, and not to counter it, but I'm going to counter it a little bit, just the ending there, like protecting the defense. And I've heard this from fans that I've talked to about it, and it's a valid point. When you have like a it's hard for fans, I think, to reason that you have this. They spent so much equity and money on the defensive line. They spent a lot of assets into the defense, and they have a defensive-minded coach. So the thought, I think, for some fans to think that your defense isn't good enough, so you feel like you have to protect it with these slow, sustained drives. I think that's hard for fans to be like, well, we have a defensive head coach and Bobby Babich and a good defensive staff. Why is that the case? Why do we feel like we need to protect the defense? So that's the only real pushback I'll give to Mike on that, in terms of why I think fans do have a point there with the whole protecting the defense point, because I think that just is a bad look for a defensive staff and a GM that's put a lot of assets and money into the defense. But in terms of the offense, I really like what Joe Brady's done through 2 weeks the Bills' explosive play rankings. 25 yards plus, they have 9 25 plus yard plays. That's first in the NFL. Runs of 20 plus, 2, that's second. Passes of 20 plus air yards, 5, that's third in the NFL. Passes of 25 plus air yards, 3, that's fifth in the NFL. So they're still like up there. This is through 2 weeks, so Miami might have skewed that a little bit. They might be a little bit lower now because of that game. And this is all courtesy of Cover One. And then also Josh Allen has an 81.5% adjusted completion percentage, which is fourth in the NFL. 9th in yards per attempt, tied for second in touchdowns passing with 0 turnovers. So I think, and I think Mike did a good job of touching on Joe Brady. I just kind of want to talk more about like the evolution of Josh Allen. And you can give kudos to Joe Brady because of that. But I was talking to Mike about it on the phone earlier this week, and how he's always been adaptable to whatever the offensive coordinator has wanted him to do, even if it hasn't been the most efficient thing or the best thing. Coming into the league, he was holding on to the ball too much. He was throwing more interceptions. He was careless with the football, fumbling it. 2019, kind of the same thing, was holding on to the ball too much, careless, not holding on to the ball when he was running it or scrambling it. And that was something you need to adjust. Then 2020, you start seeing him slide a little bit more. That's kind of like put into his mind. He's coachable, right? So I think just like the development of him, he was a guy that struggled with the long ball. Then he fixed that. Then he was struggling intermediate and short earlier in his career. Then he fixed that. Then the long ball obviously went away. Then that came back. So I think there's always things that he's always fine tuning. And I think the evolution of Josh Allen, and I think Joe Brady has helped instill this in him and his scheme and what he's asked the team to do, along with, I think, a very underrated offensive line that's been the best offensive line in the Josh Allen era. I think all of those combining pieces, you have a coachable quarterback that's one of the best to ever do it. You have an offensive coordinator that understands how to take the sugar high Josh out of himself and let him play and take what's given. And also, I think you have an offensive line that can control the line of scrimmage in the run and protect him in the pass. I think those 3 big things are just a great combination to have. I think it is sustainable. And that's why I've always been like the bottom 10 wide receiver room. Like, that's why I think that's okay with what they have established on this offense, because they don't need that. They get enough out of those guys, and Palmer, Moore, Keon Coleman, all those guys. And they're going to have games where they go off, right? There's going to be games where these guys do make plays. It's not just going to be run. But like Mike said, to have that the ability to win in multiple ways is a big thing for, this Bills offense. And I think they have taken themselves to the next level. I think Joe Brady has taken this offense to the next level. I think Josh Allen's maturity and progression, he's in the prime of his career right now. This is the best Josh Allen we've seen. I think that is why this offense is so good, and then the offensive line. So all in all, I get why fans don't want or do want the big explosive plays. They want that wide receiver one, that big play guy that can go down the field and make the big plays. It's fun to watch. And I get it. It did work. It was successful. They made a divisional round a couple of years in a row. They made the AFC Championship. But eventually it flared out. They got a new philosophy, and this is the way it's going to be. So fans are going to have to get used to it and hope that this way and this philosophy works in the big moments down the stretch.
And I got one thing before Carson takes over too. I also think a lot of it, and it's weird saying results based, but we've gotten so accustomed to them moving the ball up and down the field that when they don't succeed on given plays, we look at it as, why did they do that? That's so stupid. Like I got a couple great examples. Like they run the ball on first down in the opener and they get to 2nd and 1. Then on 2nd and 1, they get no gain. 3rd and 1, they lose 2. Fans are going to be like, that's way too conservative. You should throw the ball on 2nd down. Take a shot. Well, they're just trying to pick up first downs at that point. And they had 2 plays to get 1 yard, and they didn't execute. That's an execution thing. We talked about it on the previous show. There was also a play in one of these recent games. I think it was either week 1 or week 2, where they run a tight end screen to Dalton Kincaid. It's a low throw, and he fumbles it out of bounds, and he gets nothing. And fans are like, why are you doing tight end screens on 3rd and 6? Why are you running it up the middle on 3rd and 4? And like, yeah, you can maybe question a little bit of the logic, but there is like deeper meanings to a lot of the stuff. They're game planning throughout the week. They're scheming throughout the week. This is not just Joe Brady. This is Josh Allen talking with Joe Brady, thinking of things that they believe will work. And they're looking at other defenses' tendencies, what they struggle at, what other teams have had success against them with, and they're trying to see what they can have that works out. So the first week and a half of the season, all I heard was about how tight end screens don't work. But then against Miami, Dalton Kincaid gets a tight end screen, and he nearly takes it to the house. And when you have James Cook against Miami running for over 5.5 yards per carry, why you don't want to take the ball out of his hands. He can take it to the house at any given moment. We saw the run against the Jets. So I think a little bit of this is too results-oriented, where fans have this preconceived notion when you have a guy like Josh Allen that running the ball is a negative and that screens are negatives. When Lamar Jackson throws screens to Zay Flowers and he takes it for a 25-yard touchdown, that's not a negative. That's a good play call where they execute it properly and they score a touchdown. It's the Bills, and this is not just Bills fans, it's all fan bases. We remember and focus the bad, then and often ignore the good. People aren't going to be talking about how the Bills executed a great wide receiver screen for Dalton Kincaid that nearly got them a touchdown. But they're going to talk about it every time on 3rd and 7 they do it, where they get stuff for nothing. And here's one last point I will say about it too. In the NFL now, where teams are going for it on 4th down more than ever before, we really have to be a little less critical about what teams are doing on 3rd and 6, 3rd and 7, because oftentimes on those downs, they're not necessarily trying to convert the first down. They're trying to pick up 4 to 5 or 6 yards to just make it a makeable or go or a 4th and manageable where they can even go for it. And you saw the Detroit Lions do it last night. There was a 3rd and 7 where they ran the ball and they set up a 4th and 2 around midfield and they go for it. So if you watch football, you watch other teams, you notice these are trends. This is what teams are starting to do. But fans are normally a year or two behind the trends happening. And then once they happen, you're like, oh, they should do this, they should do that. Well, the Bills are already implementing the trends. They just haven't become the trends yet because they're ahead of the curve on it most of the time.
Well, for starters, to topple on to both of your points, I cannot believe we're having this conversation right now to even start with. Although small sample size, 3 games, the Bills are first in yards per game. They're right around that 420 yards per game mark, which is just incredible. They're 5th in the league in passing, 1st in the league in rushing. They're averaging 160-plus yards of rushing. That in itself speaks a ton, especially when you have leads. How do you put a team away? You run the football, and they've done that so effectively since Joe Brady's taken over. This year, way better really than years past, because I think of Jackson Hawes. You don't have to bring out Alec Anderson or that extra offensive lineman to provide you some weight up front and to move bodies. So Jackson Hawes has really opened up this run game, I think. Joe Brady, you talked about turnovers, Mike. The turnovers went way down. How do you lose a football game? It's by giving the ball away. 76% of teams that win football games, win the turnover battle, win the football game. So when Josh Allen is having multiple turnover football games with Ken Dorsey as his offensive coordinator, that chances are you're going to lose that football game. And you start off 5-5, and then after that point, Dorsey gets let go and Joe Brady takes over. You see an immediate switch in the philosophy. So that is absolutely huge. And you talk about the results. To look at it at a macro perspective, 22-4 is incredible. When you put that in the points percentage perspective, that really gets you to 14-3 over a 17-game sample. So for that to be thrown in there, they score 30 like clockwork. That is just incredible, an incredible stat, incredible efficiency from the offense. And then we had a saying at quarterback school, it was twig. You talked about a bunt, it was take what is given. When Sal Capaccio and Greg from Cover One, they talk about this getting the ball out quick because it's there. Why, if it throws there, why would Josh go off his second read or go to his second read to throw a football down the field. If a throw's already open, he can take it. That's his number one read, especially pre-snap if he sees that. So there's no reason for that. If you can get the ball out quick, you're avoiding a sack. You're avoiding any risk of trying to buy time and create something that's not there. And that's something that, as you touched on, with more snaps as a quarterback, that's something you start to pick up on pre-snap that goes to post-snap. And then all of a sudden you get those reps and everything becomes more seamless. And ultimately that's what's turned into how effective and how high of a level he's played at. So you look at last year as well, top 10 in yards, ninth in pass and rushing, second in points per game. The team scoring over 30 like clockwork again, although AJ will be quick to bring up that I had a hot take that their points will drop this year and over 30 points a game is something of the past. But clearly I was wrong on that to start. But, hey, I cannot believe we're having this conversation about Joe Brady. That kind of just shows the level that the Bills are playing at right now. And you have to nitpick the number one offense in yards per game. I mean, guys, come on. Like, that's an insane take to me. But Joe Brady's done a phenomenal job. The offensive line's killer. Skill positions, like we said, a little underwhelming, but they get the job done. Each player's got a different type of role. You got the MVP at quarterback, and your running back room is one of the best in the league. So overall, I approve of this offense. I think it's done an A+ job so far through 3 games. It's never going to be perfect. Teams make adjustments. It's okay for another team and another defense to make a good play every now and again. It's the NFL. But overall, it's just been pure dominance since Joe Brady took over 26 games ago.
Yeah, I mean, you guys said it all really well there. I want to just give some context too to just what the NFL is in 2025. In 2015, the average passing yards per game was 243.8. This year, right now, we're about at 222.9, which is an increase about 5 yards from last year, which was like the lowest since I think it was like 2008 or 2007, something like that, 217 yards per game. The game has changed. The NFL changes. It goes through cycles. It's happened its whole inception. They're going to be in 5 years. It might be that you have to 250 passing yards per game and teams throwing the ball all over the place. And we have 4,500 yard passers regularly and 5,000 yard passers and everything else again. But right now, that's not what it is. And the Bills but I think we talked about this a bunch in the summer leading up to this season about how the Bills are ahead on trends. They don't follow trends in the league. They are ahead on them and they set trends. And when they made this shift into this offense a couple years ago, it was because of the way that they were being defended and the way the league started defending all these teams. And I've heard it. If you listen to Mahomes talk about it, if you listen to Allen the other day on Pat McAfee talk about it, if you listen to these quarterbacks, they will tell you what's going on. And the teams are just playing soft, deep zones and daring you to take the profit underneath because they had known that those shots were available in the past couple of years, and the league got really. I mean, we had some mid quarterbacks putting up some fantastic numbers just because the way that you could get these chunk plays in the league. And it's stylistically, the game is different than what it was when 13 seconds happened and things like that. Like we're not going to see those games all the time. That's why last night, like the Monday night game and week 1 with the Bills and Ravens, those are anomalies for what we're going to see for an NFL season. If you watch the Packers were considered one of the best offenses, one of the best offensive minds the last couple of years. Look what that team did on Sunday. Like, I mean, they're playing against a great defense, but you see this, if you watch play around the league closely, like I gained a greater appreciation for the Bills, and this always happens, but having them play Thursday and being able to just sit and watch football around the league and focus in on it for 8 hours, you realize how much of a struggle it is for these teams to do the basic things. And that's why one of you said it was like, we take it for granted when the Bills mess up on one play. It's like, what the hell? What are you doing? What's going on? That's because they're so damn perfect on all these other plays. When it comes to Josh Allen, if he misses a throw, we're like, what the hell, Josh? It's because Josh, nowadays, he doesn't put it in the wrong space. He's 30-1. I can't remember is it the last 11 games? 30 touchdowns, 1 pick. I don't remember the exact stat line. I think it was 11. Like that won Aaron Rodgers back-to-back MVPs. Like doing this type of shit. Like this is something with when you talk, AJ, you were talking about the evolution of Allen, going back to that part. This is a guy who they didn't think could get to 60% completion percentage in a season, like coming out. In his first couple of years, he's sub 60, barely 60%. Like what the team has done and what he has done and the work he's put in with Joe Brady, and to perfectly mesh it with the trend and where the league is going and how defense is starting defending these elite offenses and being able to build the offensive line that they've been able to build, and having Jackson Hawes come in and be the hoss that he is, and using the 3 tight end sets that they're doing all the time and everything else to attack these light boxes. Like the Bills are just ahead of the curve, and the rest of the league is going to try to have to catch up to it over the next couple of years. And the Bills are already there. And I just think that you have to understand, if you're watching games every Sunday and not just watching the Bills, that this is where the league is at now. The league is not the air raid Big 12 offenses, 500 yards a game every other week. It's just not happening anymore. And I honestly think that's us coming back from the crazy. That's never right. When that was happening, the college offenses really getting implemented into the league and everything else, everybody was like, oh shit, this is finally happening. Nobody ever really wanted to do this. They're like, NFL coaches wanted to stay away from those concepts, everything else. And then it kind of exploded and it worked really well. And teams got really hot with it and everything else. It doesn't work anymore. I don't know if it'll ever work the same way that it did the past couple of years, but the Bills have perfectly positioned themselves to be ready for that shift, which is clearly showing what offenses are doing in this year. And to be able to put up 30 points a game when you see some of the best offenses in the league even struggling to get to that point week by week, don't take it for granted. And I think watching the rest of the league around you, and just not just red zone, like watching some full games on Sunday, have some other games on there, and just have the perspective of what the slog can look like for even some of these best offenses. Even the Lions, 6 points week 1. And maybe that was just an adjustment. Maybe that was everything else. But we're not even close to having those discussions. With
what's
this
a bad
team
game
point
for the Bills offense? 20 points? That's how it's become in recent years. They don't have games where they score single digits. They don't have the games that the Lions had against the Packers or the Packers against the Browns. That is so rare, and it's because they take care of the ball and they play complementary football. And I'll add 1 point to what you said too, Jake. I think another big part of this is that the Bills haven't had many star quarterbacks throughout their history. You got Jim Kelly, you got Josh Allen, but during the drought, a lot of horrible quarterback play. And I think there's a lot of this, well, you have an MVP caliber guy, you got to take advantage of it. You have to use him. And it's some selfishness from fans that want to see him throw for 250 every game. And they don't, because it's a sexier thing to do. It's more fun throwing the ball instead of running the ball. But you think about it, if teams are going to be light against you and they're going to play coverage, you got a top, I'll say this right now because he's playing like it. You have a top 5 running back in the NFL at the moment. You just gave him the money. You might as well start using it. Like this is another offensive conversation. The Bills are using James Cook as a 3-down back. They're heavily his usage has gone up a ton since last year. If Cook continues the way he's starting, this isn't a 1,000-yard back. This is like a 1,400-yard back who's going to be going after 1,800, 1,900 total yards from scrimmage. He does that. You're talking about he will be in that Saquon Barkley, Derrick Henry, Christian McCaffrey conversation. And it's funny. When the Bills had LaShawn McCoy, and you would say it'd be dumb not to give the ball to McCoy. He's your playmaker. James Cook is a playmaker. It's okay to hand the ball off to him. This is not a bad thing.
Yeah, just one more thing too. And I agree that they're ahead of trends, but you Mike brought it up and then Jake did. I think it is also easier to get ahead of trends when you have the personnel that the Bills do and the talent they have. Mm-hmm. I'm looking at the New York Giants last night, right? Or on Sunday night, excuse me. And the Chiefs are playing soft coverage, 2 high safeties. And the Giants did a good job at first, handing the ball off, taking what was given. Scatterbo had a couple nice runs, Tyrone Tracy. But a lot of these teams, like the Jacksonville Jaguars, look at, the Houston Texans. They have Nick Chubb, who's a shell of himself. They don't really have a rushing attack. They have a below average offensive line. I think the Bills, it's all combining at once. I think Joe Brady understands what they need to do. And I think Josh Allen understands and has changed the way he plays and understands that this is how you win football games. And again, I think it can't be overstated. This offensive line, what they can do in both the run and pass. I think it is easier for a Bills team and the Bills in general as a coaching staff to get ahead of trends because they have the personnel to do so. Because I think a lot of teams want to run the ball. I think every coach, if you're not a coach, if you're a coach in this league and you're not understanding that that's what's going on, you probably shouldn't be a coach. But I think it's the fact that the Bills have, like Mike said, a really good running back, right? They have a top 2, top 3 quarterback. They have a really good offensive line. So I think that makes it much easier for the Bills to do what teams are wanting to do, but just can't execute it because they do not have the pieces to do so. And I think that's just a big point I wanted to bring up.
The counter to that, though, is that the Bills developed that offensive line. They developed James Cook. Coming out of college, James Cook was –
I'm not saying that. I'm not saying
I know. I agree with your point. Like, they have the tools.
Yeah.
But it's also identifying talent in the draft, identifying talent through free agency.
Sure.
And getting things to work for what you're trying to do. Like you think about it, Connor McGovern, his whole thing was pass blocking when he was first brought to Buffalo. He wasn't known as a run blocker. So, and he was a left guard. Now he's a center. Osiris Torrance, he was a mauler, but he didn't allow sack in his last couple of years in college. But in his rookie year, he had his struggles. Spencer Brown was a project. Bills fans wanted to move on from him after 2 seasons, and they had the faith to keep him at right tackle and not draft a tackle in the first round when basically the whole fan base, including the smart people at some of the other networks, were all clamoring for the Bills to draft a tackle in that draft. And you look at David Edwards, I don't know if half the Bills fans can even name the starting left guard on the Bills right now. Let's be real. Like how often do you hear his name? Barely ever. So the point of it being like this offensive line is very, very good. But 2 years ago, before Joe Brady took over as offensive coordinator, nobody thought that they were really good at that moment in time. They had Dion, they had a couple pieces, but they weren't really a top-end running team. They became a top-end running team because they embraced that philosophy, and that's what they started to identify as, and that's something that you practice. Teams that don't – like when the Bills were running the ball with Brian Daboll as offensive coordinator, they might have had decent stats, but they were not a good running team. They were facing light boxes all the time, and their yards going up against light boxes was actually league average. But they averaged a decent yards per carry because they were facing light boxes more than the majority of other teams in the NFL because teams were fearful of their passing attack. The point being, now the Bills have an offense that even when they're going up against a stacked box, they have the ability to run for yardage, which makes it really difficult for teams to defend them. Because if teams want to then go counter and then stop the run in a game that the Bills are running for 6, 7, 8 yards a carry, then the Bills offense has the ability to go over the top in the passing game. This is the ultimate what you want offensively. Teams can adjust. They can do whatever they want, but as long as you have an answer back to that, they truly can't stop you because you have the ability to throw anything at them to beat them. So ultimately, this is why I think Joe Brady doesn't give enough credit because everybody wants to say, well, he had the weapons. Nobody thought James Cook was a 3-down back. Nobody thought that James Cook was a guy that could be a 15-touchdown guy. Coming out of college, people compared him like a C.J. Spiller, like a receiving back. And granted, that didn't develop as much as we wanted to. But it's like we have to credit the coaching staff for realizing the guys that they have and putting them in the positions to get the best out of them, and then also having a scheme to work around them because this is a transformational scheme change from when Daboll took over to Dorsey to Brady. And everybody talks about well, you have Josh Allen, you're going to be elite no matter what. Yes, that's the case. You're going to be a great offense, probably elite no matter who your offensive coordinator is. But there's different levels of elite. When Daboll was offensive coordinator, the Bills were scoring 28, 29 points a game when there was other teams that were lighting it up for 25, 26 points a game. It was a historic period for NFL offenses. We were just on the higher end of it. When Dorsey took over, DVOA, they were great offense. But there was things with the offense where they weren't scoring as much. You look at the NFL right now, scoring the last couple of years is down compared to 5 years ago. But the Bills are actually up compared to 5 years ago. So what we have to look at is the margins of this. What's an average offensive coordinator in Buffalo doing with this offense? Probably 25, 26 points a game. What's an elite offensive coordinator doing with this offense? 30, 31 points a game. You look at that difference, that's about a 5 point per game difference. That's a difference of probably at least 1 to 2 wins over the course of the season. So you look at even Mahomes in Kansas City, they went from 21.8 to 22.6. So the Bills scored 8+ points per game more per contest last year than what Mahomes and the Chiefs are. So we have to look at those margins. And that's why I don't think Brady gets enough credit, because without Brady, maybe this offense does score 25 points a game. But if they're scoring 25 points a game with a defense that's allowing over 20 points a game, that's the difference between going 13-4 and maybe getting the 1 seed and going 10-7 and being the 4 seed in the playoffs and having 1 home game.
You want to talk about a guy that's underappreciated? How about Aaron Kromer, the offensive line coach? Since he's been here, he's just been tremendous. We talked about how it was a struggle to run the football with Ken Dorsey as the offensive coordinator for a variety of reasons. The offensive line, just talent wasn't as good. Probably the scheme wasn't as good either. And the fact that they had a different offensive line coach in Austin Gunn. But since Kromer's taken over, the whole claim to fame with him is he knows how to develop a good run game, physical group. And that is completely correlated to the Bills' offensive line when it comes to the run game. Their physical group, you're not gonna outpush them. Spencer Brown is about as nasty as they come. Deion Dawkins, he can pancake you. He's a great finesse guy. Just up front, they're just really incredible. Osiris Torrance, I'd like for him probably to cut his hair, but since that's my only complaint, he's an absolute beast. And in the pass game, they allowed Josh to get sacked 14 times last year. And that's insane. When you, in comparison, Caleb Williams got sacked 68 times last year. Is it a little bit of a symbiotic relationship because Josh can extend the play? Yeah, of course. But regardless, the offensive line, since Kromer's been here, is taking that next step, which allows you to be multifaceted on offense, whether that's running the football, throwing the football, and that leads to so many other things play action-wise. It's just a domino effect. So Aaron Kromer is a guy that deserves all the love right now, because you could talk and praise Joe Brady as much as you want, but without the impact of Aaron Kromer, I don't think this offense is nearly as good as what they're putting on film right now.
100%.
Yep. Well said, guys. I think that at least I think we can say official statement from the Pay the Bills podcast: the offense is fine.
Mm-hmm.
Don't worry.
100%.
Well, just nice and succinct there. So that and a lot of great points there. The just how complementary it is of each other with the whole unit, between the line, between the scheme now, between Josh Allen just being a freak, between James Cook getting better, even better than he was last year. They're going to be fine. They're going to be just fine. And they're a lot of teams in the league would hope to be them. And speaking of a lot of teams in the league, a lot of teams would hope to be the Bills right now, because they are 3-0, sitting tied atop the AFC right now with the Indianapolis Colts and the Los Angeles Chargers, just like we all expected before the season started. We got a big game Sunday afternoon here coming up. The 1-2 Chiefs taking on the 1-2 Baltimore Ravens. The fact that one of those teams will be 1-3 going into the week 5 of the season, just crazy. No matter what, one of them being week 1-3. Funny tweet I saw yesterday. No matter what happens this week, one of the Dolphins or the Jets will be tied with one of the Chiefs or the Ravens. So that's just where we're at in the NFL. Crazy year to start so far this year. The AFC picture, though, and just where the Bills, the look at the 1 seed right now. Carson, I'm going to start with you. We'll go back around the horn here. How are you feeling about just the other contenders in the Bills? I think still are. I think it's obvious the Bills are the class of the AFC. I mean, they're Super Bowl favorites right now. Everything else. But when you're looking at the other contenders, the Colts, the Chargers, do you still think it's the Ravens or the Chiefs? The Steelers are at 2-1, but and it's crazy even just looking at it. There's only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 teams above 500, even the AFC out of the 16. So just been a rough start for the conference so far. But what are you thinking about the state of the top of the contenders there, and that race for the 1 seed for the Bills as we look ahead to it? Never's too early to look ahead to it.
If you're not feeling really confident, I don't know what will ever make you feel confident about the possibility of a 1 seed. That has been the one thing that the Bills haven't been able to achieve when it comes to the playoffs and their shortcomings. So we've seen it with the stats before. Having the 1 seed, especially with the new format now that was put in place a few years ago, That is so incredibly – that's an incredible advantage that you have going in to just having to beat two teams just to make it to the Super Bowl and you're there, right? So that you got to feel great, especially with the fact that Baltimore dropped the game last night to Detroit. That is a huge loss for Baltimore because right now, at least entering last night, I figured it'd be, hey, the Bills and Baltimore racing until the end. I still partially do think that, but the KC-Baltimore matchup is probably the best thing for Bills fans one way or another. Because if you look at KC, we've talked about it, they're a little bit short this year when it comes to talent. They're dealing with injuries, suspensions, you name it. They're not the same KC team, but they're still KC. They find a way. Maybe not this year, though. We'll see. But as far as Baltimore, that's a team that's, when they're hitting on all cylinders, they're one of the most talented, if not the best team in the NFL. So for them to be playing each other this early, I think that's a really, really good thing. As far as the Chargers go, they aren't on the same level as the Bills. I don't care what anyone says. They look impressive this year, but they're not nearly as dominant as the Bills are. We put teams away most of the time. The Chargers are always in a kind of a dogfight, it seems. And ultimately, the tiebreaker goes to the quarterback and coaching. I would take Sean McDermott and Josh Allen over Justin Herbert and Coach Harbaugh any day. So the Colts, they're going to flounder out. You'd have to imagine Daniel Jones' insanity run is going to end probably eventually. But I'm impressed with Danny Dimes. I'm really happy for him, especially a guy who's dealt with his fair share of criticism over the years. For him to come back, have a year where he gets away from kind of a toxic environment, smaller market in Indianapolis, and succeed, that's a great thing. But back to the Bills, 3-0, Burrow's banged up. The division is what it is. The Jets and Dolphins are horrendous. The Patriots are hoping to take that next step. They're just not there yet. You have to be thrilled right now if you're a Bills fan. I'm still worried about Baltimore. They're always going to scare me a little bit. KC, Bunt, we can have our differences all we want about them. Just the dynasty that they've had. They're in the back of the mirror. But this is a great spot to be. You couldn't have asked for a better start to the season if you're a Bills fan.
Yeah, I am. I'm thrilled. September 23rd, sitting here Tuesday night on Pay the Bills, and I'm thrilled for the 1 seed aspirations for this team. I think it's very attainable at this point. I know it's really early to say that, but despite injury in the weaker schedule this Bills team has, even the Texans look weaker down the stretch right now. They're going to play the Bengals at home without Joe Burrow. They're going to play, a Philly team that I think is good, but I don't think they're as dominant as last year. And then obviously the divisional games down the road there too. I just really like, the Bills schedule, how it's laying out. I think it's going to take a lot for the Bills to lose more than 3-4 games based on what they have in front of them, as long as no one's hurt. So again, I think we're in a great spot. And I think that now that's going to bring pressure, right? Because now, a couple of years ago, it was the Bills never got the Chiefs at home, and they got the Chiefs at home, and it didn't happen. Now this year we could be talking about, well, the Bills finally got the 1 seed in the Sean McDermott and Josh Allen era. It's just going to be about finishing, and the pressure is going to be, and we talked about it a few weeks ago, the pressure and how it's going to be at its highest this year, because I think it really is shaping up to be a Bills dream scenario in terms of what's going on around the league. The Bengals are cooked. With Jake Browning, they're just not the same team, and they can't run the ball with Chase Brown. They have no rushing attack, and Jake Browning's not good enough to sustain himself as a quarterback. The Chargers, I'm a little higher on the Chargers than Carson. I'm for a team like John Harbaugh loves to run the ball. Justin Herbert's thrown for 318 yards week 1, 242 yards in week 2, and 300 yards in week 3. So Justin Herbert in that passing attack does scare me. I think Quentin Johnston's really coming into his own as a player. Ladd McConkey, old, reliable, quick, shifty, great slot receiver. Keenan Allen, has all the technique, the ability to run routes like the best in the league still, even at his age. So they have a lot of talent over there. They just got to get the running game going. Amarian Hampton's going to get a little bit more looks now with Najee Harris tearing his Achilles. But if they can get that run game going, I think the Chargers can be a real threat to the Bills, maybe even the 1 seed. But we'll see if they can continue their dominance or maybe pulling out wins like they're not used to seeing in LA. The Chargers usually find ways to lose these games, but they're finding ways to win them. So that's another reason why I'm a little bit higher on them. Who else here? Ravens, Chiefs. We'll see. The Ravens, I think I'm with Carson. Like, I'm not going to stop worrying about them because they have so much talent. Their defense is very underwhelming. Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery were running all over the field last night in Baltimore. I mean, they could not stop them. Jared Goff looked possessed out there. Every throw he made was on the money. Jameson Williams, they have a lot of talent. The Lions, Bunt put it out during the game. They're the same old Lions, and they're still, telling the NFL that they're one of the elite teams in this league. So Ravens still worried about. Chiefs, we'll see. I think it's really going to I'll feel really settled in about the Chiefs once Worthy and Rice are back and how they look as an offense, because Carson said it. They do find ways to win. The Giants, they had opportunities to kind of take control of that game or take leads. They couldn't, take advantage of it. The Chiefs, always find a way. It's their run game for me that really, really concerns me, because they just can't do it at an elite level, or not even like an average level at this point. Kareem Hunt, Isaiah Pacheco are just not quality running backs, and Mahomes is leading their team in rushing. So I don't know. I have concerns about them, but again, I want to see them fully, with their full potential out there with the guys out there. So all in all, the Colts are going to fizzle out, like Carson said. Love Daniel Jones. Me and Jake had a conversation about it in terms of what that means for Brian Dable, but we won't go there. That's not meant for this podcast. But I like Daniel Jones, what they're doing. Jonathan Taylor looks like Offensive Player of the Year candidate. Offensive line's great. Their weapons, Josh Downs, Adonai Mitchell, Pittman, Warren. I mean, they got a lot of talent, but the quarterback play is still, I think, going to hinder them. But, this Bills team, I mean, I feel great. They're hopefully going to get the 1 seed, and that's just going to, again, put some added pressure and something the Bills have not done in the Allen and McDermott era. So we'll see what happens.
I just wish we rephrase the question. Why are we talking about which AFC team scares us the most? It should be which NFC team in the Super Bowl scares us the most, because that's where the Bills will be playing in February this year. And I'll say this, and AJ can kind of vouch for me on this. I am a glass half full Bills fan. Like, I'm never going to argue that. But when it comes to like predictions, like postseason wise, I've not like picked the Bills to like win Super Bowls or even like go to the Super Bowl. Like every single year, like AJ and me have this discussion. I'm picking Kansas City. He's like, "Why are you picking Kansas City?" Because they keep getting there. Like, until proven otherwise, like, I'm not going to go against Kansas City. But this year, going into the season, I told AJ that I had a different viewpoint about the Chiefs. And dynasties aren't meant to last forever. Things happen over time. And when you're used to seeing the same team dominate over and over and over again, sometimes you think it's impossible, or there's a world where they are always going to be reigning on top. Well, the Patriots went through a period of a decade where they didn't win any Super Bowls with Tom Brady. They dominated early on. They went 10 years. They still went to AFC championships and went to a couple Super Bowls, but they didn't win any for a decade. And then they finished strong at the end. I think we're kind of entering this period for Kansas City where it's going to be a little bit more difficult for them going forward. The last 2 years, if we're being honest, they didn't win because of their offense. They won because of their defense and situational football. They went 11-1 in one-score games last year in the regular season. They only scored 22.5 points a game. The year before, 8 points per game. The Bills are scoring way more than them. Like, I don't even think it's a conversation who's the better quarterback right now, Mahomes or Allen. Like, it's clearly Josh Allen at this point in time. I would say Lamar Jackson is clearly better than Mahomes at this time. I would even say Joe Burrow is clearly better than Patrick Mahomes at this point in time.
Herbert?
We'll see. Let's talk it down the season on that. I'm not ready to do that yet. But the point of it being, this Kansas City team is different right now. And when you are a team that has won 10 straight division titles, but Vegas is baiting people into betting you to win your division, where they're basically saying, Vegas is basically saying, we don't think you're winning your division this year. When your over-under is 9.5, what does that say right now? That, like, people are going to bet the over. Vegas is basically saying this team might not even make the playoffs. And, like, you compare it to the Bills. The Bills are 13.5 over-under for wins at the current moment.
What were the Bills last year, Mike? Going into the season, over-under?
10.5.
Okay.
10.5. And I told everybody to bet the over because public was overwhelmingly betting the under. So I have a good read on this stuff. So thank you, AJ. That's a good point. You're helping me look better in front of this audience. But right now, the Bills are 13.5. There's the closest any other teams are at is 11.5 right now. And the Chargers are one of those teams. So Vegas is the Chargers are minus money to win the AFC West at this point. They're minus 150, 160. The Bills are the same odds of getting the top seed in the AFC, which is crazy after 3 weeks. But you look at it, the Bills already own the tiebreaker on the Ravens, and the Ravens have 2 losses, which means if the Bills go 14-3, the Ravens are going to have to go 15-2 to get the 1 seed. If the Ravens lose one more game, the Bills can get the top seed over the Ravens at 14-3. And when you look at the Bills' road schedule and you consider the fact that going into the season, the Texans might have been their most difficult road game, and the Texans are now 0-3, the road schedule looks pretty easy. Now, will they drop a game to someone they shouldn't? Maybe. But even the home schedule, you just defeated the toughest team on your home schedule. Week 1, out of the way. You stole one. One of the other most difficult teams, the Bengals, their MVP caliber quarterback is out and will not be playing. So that leaves 2 very difficult home games against the Chiefs and the Eagles. Even if you lose both, you could go 15-2 and still win the conference. The Bucks could be somewhat difficult, but the point of it being, the schedule lines up. They have the easiest remaining schedule. Their number 1 threat in the Ravens are already losing the tiebreaker, so good luck to them. And then the other threat, Kansas City, is going through an identity crisis right now. What made Kansas City great in the past wasn't just that Mahomes was good, but was that they could run the ball against a team that could slow down Mahomes. They can't run the ball right now. They can't protect Mahomes. Adding another receiver or 2 isn't going to help them. They added DeAndre Hopkins in the last year or the year before. And what did Hopkins really do for them? Not much. Hopkins was a 1,000-yard receiver the year before. He can still play. He can still make plays, but he didn't do much in Kansas City. They added the guy from the Giants who I can't even remember his name because he ended up stinking so much.
Kadarius Toney.
Yeah, Kadarius Toney. That didn't do much. And they added Sky Moore early in the draft out of Western Michigan. That didn't add much. They keep adding
Rice and Worthy.
No, you can say that for Rice. You can't say that for Worthy.
That's true. All right, Rice. Sure.
And Rice is going to miss another 3 games. They're going to be playing the Lions and the Ravens in the next 3 games. Are they beating the Lions without Rice? Are they beating the Ravens without Rice? You keep saying Rice and Worthy are going to be back. If they're 1-5 or 2-4 in how many weeks, are they going to win the AFC West? No, they're not. The Chargers might be 3 games ahead of them by that point. And they already won a game against them. So you can tell me all you want about Rice. Shame on him for getting suspended.
True.
So, and then Worthy, could be a great player, but he's still unpolished. He's still a poor route runner. And yes, they can scheme him for a lot of great things, but Worthy still has to prove himself. There's a lot of things about Worthy that weren't great last year. So when it comes to the Chiefs, I'm not counting them out. Come playoff time, if they're playing the Bills in the divisional round in Buffalo and they're a 6th seed, I'm still going to think Kansas City has a team to beat the Bills. So I'm not counting out Kansas City. What I am going to say is Kansas City better just hope to make the playoffs at this point, because it's not a guarantee they're going to make the postseason the way it's currently shaping up for them. And that's not because Kansas City doesn't have talent, but they got a hard-ass schedule, the exact opposite of Buffalo.
Yeah.
And so yes, with the Chiefs, I don't think they're winning the AFC West. The Ravens, I think they'll win the North. The Chargers, lots of respect for them. I think they're going to win the West. But I've seen so many fans when I talk about the Bills having this path to the 1 seed, bringing up points like, don't count out the Colts and Chargers. They're both 3-0. I'm like, cool. You got to do more than 3-0 to get in the conversation of being with the Chiefs, the Ravens, and the Bills. Come on. The Chiefs, the Ravens, and the Bills have been doing this for half a decade. And you're going to be telling me about the Chargers who routinely find ways to choke and fuck more than the Bills. I believe in Herbert.
And Harbaugh. Harbaugh is
I believe in Harbaugh too. I believe in Harbaugh more than I believe in Herbert. But we're really going to just assume that the Chargers are going to beat teams like Minnesota, that they're going to beat teams like Miami. I can see the Chargers still losing games against bad teams. They're not some powerhouse.
They almost did.
Yeah, they're not a powerhouse yet. They're a good team. They play complementary football. They do things the right way. But are people really thinking they're going to go 13-4, 14-3? Like, that's what they're going to have to go. That's what the Bills are going to do this year. They're going 13-4, 14-3, 15-2. They're going somewhere in that 3 games. So I don't see how the Chargers are getting to that level. And then the Colts, come on. Like, let's be real. Like, nice start for the Colts. Maybe they win the AFC South. I like the team. Carson, I actually like Daniel Jones a little bit more than you might. He had flashes in New York, but he also had an incompetent coaching staff leading the way. Sorry to Brian Dable, who went to the same high school as me, but God, just horrible head coaching there, and I can't overstate that enough. One of the worst coaches in the league. But like, that being said, like, the path is there. The path is there. And you look at the odds, the Bills are minus 150 to win the top seed in the AFC after 3 weeks of the regular season. That is something you wouldn't expect to see after 10 weeks of the regular season. Like, that is unreal. And then number 2 is the Chargers, and they're like plus 450, which is basically Vegas saying the Chargers are winning the AFC West. Like, they're going to win the AFC West. And then the Ravens are plus 750. That's basically Vegas saying, we think the Ravens are the second best team in the AFC, but they all already lost to Buffalo head-to-head, and Buffalo has such an easy schedule. We don't see a scenario where the Ravens can jump the Bills because it would take the Bills killing themselves. And you want to know what the Chiefs are? They're plus 1,500.
Yeah.
Like, so it ain't happening.
It's a lot with it's a lot with the divisions too. Like with the specific teams you're mentioning, like the Ravens are behind. They're going to have an easier time with that division to get ahead of the Chargers. The Chargers are. Let's talk about just the 2 little things here. The Chiefs were 11-0 in 1-score games last year. This year they're already 0-2. The Chargers 2-0 in 1-score games. But if you talk, like, the thing that I like to look to, especially as we get going further in the season, is point differential. Bills are 3rd in the league in point differential, plus 31. They've got their 102 points per game. It's 102 points for already this year. It's 3rd in the league because the Colts and Lions are tied for 2nd there. But that Colts team is plus 47. They had 1 blowout win. We're going to learn a lot about that Colts team this week. They play against the Rams. What they've been able to play from ahead. They've been able to play really, really easy football for Daniel Jones. They even mentioned on the broadcast that, like, everything is rollouts, everything is bootlegs, everything is half reads of the field and everything else. I'm very interested to see what the Colts look like if they're down 10-0 to the Rams this week. Like, what does that offense look like? The Chargers are beating teams, but they're not blowing teams out. They're more in that point differential range of the Commanders and Packers right now. So it is. It's just there's levels to this. As Mike, you were saying, like, it takes a lot more to just get into the tier of the elite teams in the league where the Bills are at.
Can I say one last thing?
Yeah,
too?
Of course.
Like, I'll try to keep this quick. I know, AJ, we got to get going soon. We're already over time. We should be rooting for the Ravens against the Chiefs for this simple reason. The Ravens are going to win the AFC North. They're not going to lose that to Pittsburgh or Cincy or Cleveland. So the Ravens are going to win the AFC North. The Bills already have the tiebreaker over them. We should not worry about the Ravens taking over the Bills for the top seed. The thing about the Chiefs is this. If you can get the Chiefs to be a wild card team or even potentially worse, miss the playoffs, you could have one of your top opponents in your arch nemesis knocked out of the playoff picture before you ever even have a chance to face them. So imagine this. The Chiefs are the 5 seed. Say they end up having a good season. They go 11-6, but the Chargers go 12-5. The Chiefs are a 5 seed. They're going on the road. Maybe Baltimore drops another couple games. Baltimore drops to the 4 seed. The Colts have a good year. You could have a Chiefs-Ravens first-round game. Even another scenario. Say it is a team like the Colts are in the 4 seed, and the Chiefs are going on the road to play Indy in the first round. Who's to say that a team like Indy couldn't upset a team like the Chiefs in the first round? Hell, even better scenario. The Chiefs are going on the road, and they play the Chargers in the first round. There's so many scenarios where if the Chiefs get a wild card, they will have a very difficult first-round matchup. And I know they went on the road and they went through Buffalo and Baltimore and won a Super Bowl 2 years ago. This is not that same team. And this team is more vulnerable. This team plays closer games, and they struggle with certain things. And I don't know if the Chiefs could go on the road 3 straight games in the playoffs and get back to the Super Bowl. That's if they even make the playoffs. Like, scenario, they miss the playoffs, whole lot of crazy things happen. Second thing, say Baltimore's the 2 seed. They're probably gonna get past like whoever they play in the first round. They'll probably smoke some 7 seed. What if in the second round, Baltimore is playing another quality 3 seed? What if they're playing the Chargers? What if it is the Chiefs that pull off an upset and the Chiefs are playing the Ravens in the second round? You have a scenario where potentially, this isn't likely still, where you could avoid the Ravens and the Chiefs in the playoffs to get to a Super Bowl. You're the overwhelming favorite then. So, not saying that's going to happen, but there's scenarios where if the Chiefs stack some losses and the Ravens get that bad matchup, that team that can contain Lamar, where you have a path to the Super Bowl that could be a lot easier than what they've had in recent years. And you know what? I don't care if the Bills win a Super Bowl going by beating Jacksonville and then beating the Chargers. Hell, they could play the Dallas Cowboys or whatever random team in the NFC, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And no, give me, I don't know, any team. Give me any random team, and I will take it. I will take it, and I will enjoy it. I don't care if they beat the Chiefs. I don't care if they beat the Ravens. Just give me a path to the Super Bowl. And that's what fans should be thinking about now, because there are scenarios that will make it a lot more obtainable than in recent years.
Well said, gents. All right, let's get our predictions in and let's get out of here. And I think what's very attainable is a win on Sunday. I picked a blowout win on Thursday, guys. That was my first time way off. You guys were on it with a close game. But I think you guys all maybe one score games there. So we were like all over the place. It was a weird football game. They should have handled that game. It would have been 38-21, 34-21, whatever. But I'm just going back to the blowout well again this week. So I'm just going to pick the same score I picked last week. I'll get it right eventually. 41-7 Bills over the New Orleans Saints this week. Carson, what you got?
Saints stink, plain and simple. I'd like to see the Bills put them away early. They're 8th worst in points per game defensively. But this kind of brings me back to when the Bills played the Jags in 2021. Bills were minus 14.5 favorites. They lost that game 9-6. It's a game you can't beat yourself in. They win this turnover battle, or even if it comes out even, they're good enough to win it if it's -1 as well. You just cannot lose this game through the turnover battle mightily. Bills are just a way better team than the Saints. Stay healthy in this game. Come out with a victory. Put them away early. Give me the Bills 38-15 over the Saints.
Yeah, right on, Carson. I think that this Saints team, I watched the Seahawks game. They were in Seattle last week. That's another factor of this. They got to travel back from Seattle, go back to New Orleans, and then go to Buffalo in a span of 2 weeks. And their mojo's just gone. Kellen Moore, is it his first year head coach, right? Kellen Moore. Yep. So he's trying to still establish. They don't really have a quarterback. Spencer Rattler's had some moments. They have some weapons. Shaheed, Chris Olave, Juwan Johnson's been good from the tight end position. Alvin Kamara, obviously, but it's not going to be enough for them. I think the Bills blow the Saints out. Josh Allen does what he does. I think the defense looks good against an inferior team at home. The Bills win 42-13.
So I'm going to preface my prediction by saying I'm 0-3 picking the Bills against the spread this year. So don't bet based on whatever I say here. I picked the Ravens week 1, then I picked the Jets to cover week 2, was off by that. Then I was like, okay, I picked the Jets week 2. I'll pick the Bills to cover week 3, and then Miami ends up covering. So
that's why Vegas has you in a blender, man.
So I'm normally pretty good with this stuff unless it involves picking the Bills spread on a weekly basis. 16.5 is a lot. My rule is never pick a team to cover that big of a margin. I feel like if I pick the Bills to cover, then it's going to be a close game. And if I pick a close game, the Bills are going to win by like 30. So I'm going to pick the Saints to cover, and I'm going to go 35-21. Saints get a late touchdown. This will be bigger blowout than what the final score says.
All right. Well, I like the little reverse jinx Bunt's got going on, but we got 2 other blowouts here. And a nice, hopefully easy Sunday afternoon for the Buffalo Bills is what we'll see. And then we'll be back here next week, Tuesday, to talk all about it. So thank you, Mike. Thank you, AJ. Thank you, Carson, for joining in here. Thank you, everybody who tuned in to this show. Shout out to our sponsor, Picasso's Pizza at PicassoPizza.net. Get your pizza in Western New York and anywhere nationwide. We paid the bills. Go Bills.